you state your name for me?
My name is Murdis Johnson.
And what are you doing here in St. Helena Parish Courthouse?
I'm here. I'm doing genealogy on my husband's side of the family for my kids.
Really? So what are you looking at right now?
I'm looking at some records on the Gallmans, some marriage license records because there's a lot of information on there. And so I'm looking at the records to find some information.
How long have you been researching?
I've been researching off and on for about 6 or 7 years on different families, including my family, which is the Pitts, and Womack's. And so I've done quite a bit
Out of St. Helena?
Out of St. Helena Parish in Greensburg.
What cemeteries have you been to for research?
I've been to the Womack Cemetery, of course, the Hookfin Cemetery, the Montgomery Cemetery, the Pitt Cemeteries, the Thomas Cemetery, the Hookfin Cemetery in Kentwood, because the...
In my neck of the woods. That's where I live in Kentwood.
Okay, you're probably related to me. I shouldn't say that on camera, but... and I've been to several cemeteries. Matter of fact, I have a slave cemetery that I did along with Mr. Bob Melia from Kenner, Louisiana. We did a slave cemetery on Highway 38 and Pipkin Road right here in Greensburg.
Really?
Yes.
Well, we would love to have you come on and share more stuff with us.
I'll be glad to.
Well, thank you. So I see you know all about the vault, huh?
Yes, I do.
You like the vault?
Love it.
Love it, yeah.
Yes.
Only one of the few places you can go in and touch the records, huh?
Yes. And that.
Hi, this is Antoinette Harrell from Nurturing Our Roots television talk show and radio blog talk show. I'm here in the slave cemetery, standing here with Miss Murdis Johnson, who had all these markers placed in a slave cemetery in St. Helena Parish. Miss Johnson, I want to thank you. I can't thank you enough for all that you have done. Matter of fact, a hug. Thank you. Miss Johnson, how did you find this cemetery?
The way I found the cemetery is that Mr. Joe Day, he was a warden in St. Helena Parish jail, and he knew that I was trying to find out how I could get help to clean up my father's and grandfather's cemetery. And Mr. Joe Day, someone told me to call him, and I did. And he said, oh yes, if you were going to help you, to clean up your father's cemetery, but we have another cemetery up there. And he told me about this cemetery.
Really?
Yeah. And when he told me about it, he said that it was maybe 8 or 10 slave burial sites there.
So how many is it in here now?
It is 80 grave sites now.
Is there a name for this cemetery here?
There's no name for the cemetery. The only connection I have is that it was from the Kemps.
The Kemps.
Yes.
Okay, now I would like to ask you, you put all these markers here?
Yes, I did.
Oh.
But before I could find out where the burial sites actually were, I contacted the cemetery people in New Orleans. And they told me about a man named Mr. Bob Melia. And Mr. Bob Melia, when I contacted him, he said, oh, I have not had any African Americans to contact me at all. He said, what do you have? And I began to explain to him what I had, and that we wanted to find out exactly how many burial sites and identify the burial sites here in the cemetery. And Mr. Bob Melia said, well, I have what we call a heat censoring device. And what that heat censoring device does is once the dirt in the ground is moved any kind of way, when it's placed back, the temperature changes.
Oh, really?
It never goes back to the original temperature.
Really?
Yes. So when he told me about that, he said, hey, I will be glad to come and identify those sites for you.
And he did? He volunteered to do it?
Well, I asked him, I said, well, what's it going to cost? And he said it's going to be pro bono.
Oh my goodness.
He said, I'm going to do it for you. And I was elated, and we started to work right away.
So I want to walk over here with you. I want you to show the view. Let's take all of these markers that we see. Let's say here. Now this is the head here. This is the head, right?
Yes.
This is the head of the brain. This is the head, and this is the foot here. So they all are lined up here.
Well, no, the sites, the markers are only identifying. It's not necessarily head or foot. Each marker is just placed in a burial site.
Okay.
In a burial site.
Now, I noticed that you have one with a cross over here that has that. Now, is this a burial site as well? I mean, I know
That's a burial site, and that is the only burial site that was identifiable in this cemetery at the time that we began to mark the cemetery.
And when you say identifiable, what do you mean by that?
But by saying that it was a burial site.
It was a what?
Yes. The only thing we were going on before Mr. Bob Melia used his heat censoring devices and his archaeologists to mark these burial sites was the impressions.
So what do you need the people in the community of St. Helena to do? What could we do to help? Because first of all, we need to maintain the cemetery.
Yes. I would like for the people in St. Helena to do one or two things. To physically come together and come out and donate their labor to get the cemetery cleaned up, and we can form some kind of mechanism to maintain cleaning the cemetery. Or if they would contribute monetarily for someone to come out and clean the cemetery, and maybe we can do this on a continual basis to make sure that nothing is ever lost and that it is always neat and tidy.
Now, Ms. Johnson, do you have any idea of any of the names of the people, like the surnames of the people who may be in this cemetery?
I have an idea. And I was fortunate enough to interview a lady by the name of Miss Pearl Knighton. At the time that I interviewed her, she was, I believe, 99 years old. But she was still very sharp as a tack. And her daughter, when I arrived, her daughter said, I am so glad you're here, because she's been beside herself, knowing that you were coming. She wanted you to hurry up and get here.
Really?
So she could tell me who was in that cemetery and who lived in this area.
Did you record
many years
it?
ago. I recorded it. I have a tape of Miss Pearl Knighton's interview with me.
Is she still living?
Miss Pearl Knighton was, she passed away about 2 years ago.
So she was waiting for you to come and get that information.
She was. And it was, I would say, it was just amazing, all of the things that she remembered. She was so sure in her remembrance until her grandson was standing at the end of her bed. And he was telling her about something that she said, what? And he said, well, didn't you say so? She said, well, no. I don't remember saying anything like that. And I want to be sure that I tell this lady exactly what went on and who's who and what's what.
Ms. Johnson,
she was that sure of herself.
It sounds like you came in contact with a lot of the elderly white people, European people, who have yet passed, they have passed on since they gave you this information.
Yes.
Tell me about the older man that you spent a lot of time with on your journey here.
Mr. J.W. Kemp.
Yes.
Very, very nice older Caucasian man. In fact, his father was contributed to saving this cemetery because they were cutting a road in here, and his father heard about it. He came up here himself, and he told the road people that was cutting the road, look, you cannot go too far over here because there's a cemetery there. And at that time, there was no markings at all on how large it was or how small it was. And that is contributed to Mr. J.W. Kemp.
Well, we're just going to get a couple of more pictures here, and we're just happy that you will be a guest on the television show as well as the radio show. I know people would like to hear from you. We thank you for everything that you have done.
Okay, and
Thank
thank
you.
you as well.